All right.
My
You
name
want to
is
start,
Terry.
Terry?
Yeah, I'll kick this off. My name is Terry. I'm a cocaine addict, and my friend Howard is in pinch hitting for Page today, probably the greatest pinch hitter we've had here. So, Howard, you want to come in and introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Howard Eber, and I am an addict and alcoholic, and I am honored to be here. Thank you.
Hey, Howard.
Thanks, thanks, buddy. We are going to be on page 44, but beforehand, we'll do a quick lay aside prayer. And if you're unmuted, please mute yourself. That'd be great because we are recording it. So let's have a moment of silence for anyone who's hurting or suffering. Uh, doesn't matter if they're alcoholic or addict or not. Anyone who's hurting. God, please help me to lay aside everything I think I know about the big book, this disease, the 12 steps, the program, myself, and especially you, dear God, so I may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. And please help me to see the truth. Amen. All right, Howard, I'm gonna let you kick us off today, pal.
Okay, sure. My name is Howard Eber. As I said, I'm still an addict and alcoholic. I know we are on 44 too, but I want to back up a little bit since we only covered one paragraph last week, and there's so much stuff in that. I figured we'd spend a few minutes on that today. The title of the chapter is We Agnostics, and we've defined agnostic as meaning one who is without power, without knowledge, without experience, without personal relationship with our Creator. And I've always thought that the chapter was written to those of us who considered ourselves agnostics, but I've come to a better, deeper understanding that this chapter is directed to all of us. Because every one of us here are agnostic. There are 26 people here today, and 26 people are agnostics. And if you doubt, what your level of agnosticism, you got to ask yourself a couple of questions. You know that God has relieved your obsession to use because He has, okay? And you know that God has been there for you in so many ways because He has. But are you absolutely certain that He's going to provide for you financially, emotionally, the right relationship, and so on? To find your current level of agnosticism, where do you have doubt? Where are you struggling right now? My unmanageability is my alcoholism, and that's my agnosticism. The truth of my agnosticism lies in the area of my current unmanageability. So, what is your current area of unmanageability? They're not disconnected. Where do you have doubt about God coming into your life and taking care of whatever it is that you're struggling with? Because the truth of that current unmanageability is a reflection of your current agnosticism, and there's nothing wrong with it. Doubt is a good thing. So we learn from that. So I believe this chapter is directed to all of us. And it begins by telling us that in the preceding chapter, you've learned something about alcoholism. And you may want to put a question mark after that. Have you? What have you learned about alcoholism? Step one really is what we're referring to. We hope we've made clear the distinction between the alcoholic, and the alcoholic is the person with the allergy and the obsession, and the non alcoholic, and that's the person who doesn't have the allergy and the obsession. This is real complicated stuff, really complicated stuff here. But this next sentence, I turn into two questions. I think we all do. The statement says, if when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you're probably alcoholic. And so I turn those into two questions. The first question is, have you been able to quit entirely on your own resources? Simple. When I'm working with someone, if they tell me, yeah, I've been able to quit, guess what? Close up the book, go home, it's over. You don't have to do any more work after this. If you've been able to quit entirely, the hell you need me for? What do you need this book for? So if you've been able to quit entirely, and usually the answer to that is no, I'm not able to quit entirely. And the second one is, do you have any control over the amount you take once you start? And usually the answer to that is no. And when I with people on this part of the book, what we do right here is answer those two questions. So I will collectively ask you, have you been able to quit entirely on your own resources? And hopefully you're all saying no. Have you been able to control the amount you take once you start? And I'm sure the answer is no. And before we finish, I'm going to ask you to turn back to page 30. Keep your place on 44, but let's turn back to page 30 for just a moment. The second paragraph. We're going to do the same thing. There's a statement, and we're going to turn it into a question. We've learned we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. Notice doesn't say surrender. The word surrender doesn't even appear anywhere in the first 164 pages of this book. Nowhere. The word Bill uses more often than not is concession and concede. And concede just means absolute, total, unconditional surrender. So there's a difference in intensity between surrender and concede. So the question here, the number one, step one question is, have you conceded to your innermost self that you are alcoholic? And I'm hoping I've just heard 32 people say yes, then congratulations. You're done with the first step, and it's now on to the second step. And I'm going to finish this paragraph, and then I'm going to turn it over to Terry. So if that be the case, you may be suffering, and it lets you decide, from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. And P.S., I'll let you in on a secret. That's the basic premise of the AA program. Right there. Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody because they'll stop reading and they won't go any further. But that sentence is the basic premise of the AA program. Terry?
Thanks, Howard. That was awesome. I like what you said in the beginning as well. And we're all agnostics. But what happens if we come across someone who's an absolute believer? You know, who is you can't shake my faith, you can't touch it, blah blah blah. Well, ask yourself, do you believe in a God in your life? Do you have a God in your life, but are you living life like you have a God in your life? Let me explain that. Did
Mm-hmm.
you lie today? Or did you gossip about anyone today? You know, did you be judgmental of someone today? You know, what we're looking at is we're really looking at the mind when we look at we agnostics, because we're agnostically inclined individuals. We rely on ourselves. And it's all going to wrap into this little thing called the God of reason, a thinker, the talker, the lover, the Rambo, the Xena, you know, the Romeo that's in your head, the liar that's in your head. We're going to be really focusing on that. And Howard talked about it, the unmanageability. Yeah, these are connected. I mean, why are the bedevilments on page 52 and we agnostics? That is the unmanageability of step one. Why are we talking about that? Because they're connected. Absolutely. So let's go to the next paragraph. And it says, to one who feels he is an atheist or an agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic or an addict of the hopeless variety. Yet again, we take statements, we turn them into questions. If you never even heard of that concept, the whole point of it is that I could read this book like a romance novel, but when I take statements, I turn them into questions or considerations. The book starts to talk to me personally. It starts to become a book of mirrors. I start to have a new experience with this book. You actually could put it in the first person as well. And am I an alcoholic or an addict of the hopeless variety? What does hopeless mean? It means I can't stay stopped, both in the mind and the body. Yes, I am. To be doomed in alcoholic death, I love these two options, or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. Both suck. Right? There's a kicker to that as well. There's a kicker to that, and I'll explain why they both suck. And to be doomed in alcoholic death, I suck at doing that. I mean, I try to purposely try to overdose and drink myself to death. I keep waking up. I obviously can't do that well. I can't control or manage or enjoy my drinking. I continue to fail at it, right? But what about this spiritual, live on a spiritual basis? Why do I suck at that? Well, I have this little thing called ADD. If you never heard of this, it's called alcoholic defiance disorder.
Love that. Love that.
Or addict. Hey, what's up, buddy? You want to say hi? Hey, Phoenix. So, and why, even one of our common characteristics of every alcoholic or addict is defiance. And when we come across things like this spiritual means of living or living on a spiritual basis means an underlying support or foundation, it's really uncomfortable. It's extremely uncomfortable to what? To your mind, to the thinker, to the talker, to the liar, to the Romeo, the Rambo, the spiritual man is another one. The AA convention speaker doesn't like that, right? It goes against everything that you ever believed in. It goes against all your old ideas and it goes against all your old emotions or your feelings, right? It goes against the grain. And the kicker to that is I suck at doing both. I mean, I need power in my life. I lack power. They're setting us up for the next page when they tell us what our real problem is. I mean, they spent all like I don't even know how many pages on convincing us that we have to concede that we're a real alcoholic or a real addict, that that me on my own power, choice, and control, I'm gonna drink again, I'm screwed, right? But then it's like a hook, it's like a bait and switch. Our real problem is that we lack power. And if you read the book, and it's fascinating when you read it, pages 1 through 20, or the title page to 23, talks about our lack of control that we have, mostly talking about the body or the allergy. And then from 23 to 43, it talks about our lack of choice, where I start to lose the power to choose whether I'm going to drink or not. Now we're going into lack of power is our main dilemma, which is the main problem. And the whole point of this program and the whole point of the steps is not the steps don't help you stay or get sober. They help you to this power. They help you with an acquisition of power or a relationship with this power, which will help you live, which is the biggest problem that all of us have is we have a living and thinking problem. All right, back to you, Howard.
Yeah, it's funny that that last sentence that you read, to be doomed to an alcoholic death or live on a spiritual basis and not always easy alternatives to face. I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard that non-alcoholics don't have any difficulty with that question. It's only the alcoholic who says, "Can I get back to you in the morning? Can I think about it overnight? Just what exactly do you mean by death? Can you be more specific?" I'm not sure that I hear non-alcoholics, that's an easy decision to make. I don't know. In any case, but it isn't so difficult. About half our original fellowship were of exactly that type. At first, some of us tried to avoid the issue. Any avoiders here? Okay. Hoping against hope. Any hopers here? Bill is talking about our relationship to God here. And over the next couple of pages, he talks about here, he says that we avoided it. And then we hoped against it. And then on the next page, he talks about how we neatly evaded it. And then he says we had avoided it entirely, or we abandoned the idea entirely, or we rejected it entirely. And then he finally comes up with him saying we couldn't postpone or evade the question any longer, but it shows the different stages that we go through. We had avoided, we evaded, we ignored, we abandoned, we rejected, and then perhaps we couldn't evade it any longer. But to continue as it is means disaster, especially if he's an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards. Um, Hoping against hope, we weren't true alcoholics. But after a while, and that's even when sober, incidentally, after a while is not just when we're drinking and drugging. After a while, we had to face, we had to is another way of saying must, incidentally. Always like to circle the musts in green in our workshop. So there are a lot of them. Paige is fond of saying this is an awful musty book because there's a lot of musts in this book. I think we've counted so far 143 of them. And here's one of them. For those of you who say there are no musts, here's one that appears differently. We had to face the fact that we must, and there it is all by itself, we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. And above else, I just wrote die because that's what we're talking about. We had the decision, Terry mentioned it a moment ago. There's our decision right there. This isn't let's make a deal where we have three doors. We have door number one and we have door number two. That's it. Um, Perhaps it's going to be that way with you, but cheer up. Something like half of us thought we were atheists or agnostics. Our experience shows you need not be disconcerted. Disconcerted just means trouble. You don't need to be troubled. You don't need to be confused. So if you think you're an atheist or if you think you're an agnostic, don't worry about it because our experience shows that that's a question you don't need to worry about at this point. You know, the beauty of this chapter is it doesn't try and convince me that there even is a God. All it does is give me enough new information so that I might consider it, so I might ponder it, so I might be willing to entertain the possibility that there is a power greater than myself. And if I do that, then God will prove to me that there is a God. So if you're an atheist or if you're an agnostic and you think that's a trouble, that's a problem, don't worry about it. Like we say in Yiddish, nicht gefährlich means don't worry about a thing. Go ahead, Ter.
But cheer up. Uh, cheer up. I want to mention this. I started doing this the last time I went through this chapter with someone I worked with. Is I started to highlight and count how many times it says the word thoughts, thinking, prejudice, doubt. These are all descriptions of the mind, right? They're talking about our thinking. And they're showing us our agnosticism. They're showing it to us in these words. And they're going to give us a reason why we're going to abandon it utterly to God in the third step. Why my thinking is flawed. How I need a new, what is called God thinking when I go from the fourth step into the fifth step. So I put number one against up on the word thought. You want to try it out with me? Go ahead. So, if a mere code of morals, like truths, or a better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. But we found such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. And here's a spiritual exercise for everyone here. Look at all of your previous codes or philosophies or different ways you tried to, manage and control or use power to overcome alcoholism. Did it work? And everything I've tried pretty much did not. It got to the point where I went cuckoo for Cocoa Puff. Maybe what's codes and philosophies, like don't drink, go to meetings. It's a good code and a philosophy. Right? I'm gonna call my sponsor at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's a good idea. He didn't like that too much, Howard. I mean, look at the current codes and philosophies, right? And have they worked in your life? How much you try, no matter how much I've tried, it just doesn't work. And I could wish to be moral or truthful. I could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, I like to collect facts in this book. Fact means proven to be true. In fact, I could will. That's another word for thinking. Will is our thoughts. Number two, I could think these thought things with all my might, but the needed power wasn't there. We're really going into a lack of power now. Our human resources, as marshaled by our will, our thinker up here, number three, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. And look at your experience with your thinking. And has it been successful? You I mean, I'm on this. We're all reading a big book on a Friday night at 8 o'clock. My thinking wasn't very successful, but I bought into this. I took the blue pill or the red pill, whatever it is in the matrix, right? I tried this program against everything my mind was telling me not to do. And I had a revelatory experience. All right, back to you, Pat.
I didn't want to put this up as a share background. So I put something up in the chat if anyone's interested about what we're going to be looking at right here. Uh, um, our human resources marshaled by the will, as Terry mentioned, failed utterly. And just to back up a point here, Bill mentions it over and over in these last few pages. He talks about a code of morals. He talks about a better philosophy. Well, what is that exactly? And Terry mentioned a couple of things. And to me, it's as simple as a code of morals is a sense of right and wrong. I had a sense of right and wrong. I used to think I had a conscience. It went right out the window when I was drinking and drugging, but when I wasn't, I thought I had a code of morals. And I had a philosophy, I had a sense of philosophical convictions. That's the word Bill uses later, philosophical convictions. And what that means to me is knowledge that I've gained through personal experience. So we have these set of morals. Everyone here has a code of morals. We have a sense of what is right and wrong. And we have a sense of, based on our experience, of what's going to happen if we do certain things. We have those morals. We have those codes. Didn't do shit. Didn't do shit when we needed it. So continuing. Lack of power. Please notice P is lowercase. Whenever you see power, lowercase, it means human power. It means strength. And Bill's going to show us the difference right here. That was our dilemma. That was our problem. Lack of power is our problem. Terry mentioned it a moment ago in the beginning. That's what the problem is. We had to, is another must for those of you who are keeping track, find a power, still lowercase, by which we could live. And it had to is another must, be a power. And now we're talking about capital P. Squiggly writing too. Yeah, I come from the Naugatuck Valley in Connecticut, and we don't know things like italics. We call it squiggly writing. So when you see squiggly writing, it means it's important. But capital P means God. Lower P means human strength. Two different types of strength. So we're talking about this power greater than ourselves, obviously, but where and how were we to find this power? And I want to just take a break here for a second. Bill is posing a couple of questions here. He's asking us, where are we going to find the power? How are we going to find the power? And I'm going to suggest you add a third part. When? When am I going to find the power? So the answer to these questions is, where are we going to find the power? Right next to that, right? See page 55. Don't read ahead. That's cheating. But just write, see page 55. That's where you'll find that. How were we to find this power? Well, next to that, right, page 46, because that's where you'll find that. Don't jump ahead. That's cheating. But I will tell you the answer to the last part, because we're adding when. When am I going to find this power? And if you've added when, next to it, put down, see page 55, because on 55, it says, in the final analysis, that's where he is found. Deep down in every man, woman, and child. After we've looked everywhere else, we've tried everything else, every vitamin theory, every exercise, every cuckoo book written about how to avoid this and how to overcome mental depression in 3 easy lessons. After we've tried everything else, that's when we turn to God. In the 12 and 12, Bill says we are forced under the lash of alcoholism to turn to God. And that is the final analysis. That's when. Terry, you can go back.
Yeah, I mean, you can even make a strong case to what is this power, and that's you could see that on page 53, and why should I find this power, which is on page 52, which we won't give you because that's cheating. So that means you gotta stay. Yeah, you gotta come back next week. Actually, next few weeks. We average about a page, page and a half a week. So it might be a little while. Yeah, is lack of power, is that my dilemma? Is that my problem? Yeah, it really is. And yes, when I work with another alcoholic, and when I work with another alcoholic, an addict, it gives me immunity from drinking, but it but I need a power by which I could live. And that's exactly what this book is all about. Is it obvious to me that I have lack of power as my problem? Is it obvious to you? And I love how they pose that question for us, and we're going to read it on page 55 as well. But well, that's exactly what this book is about. This book's main objective is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. What problem? Name one. Just name one. I could go down the list, but the main one is lack of power. The umbrella of lack of power, and it will solve not just one problem, but multiple problems, or maybe all your problems. I'll be as bold as Bill and say all my problems. Right? And this book is an enabler. Should go to Alan on right. It's gonna enable you to find this power. I mean, Ralph White would say that this book is not the treasure. This book is the treasure map to a power greater than self, which will help you what live, which will help you live happily, which will help you live happily, useful, and whole. That's the whole and the byproduct of that is that you're no longer thinking about getting high and drunk. That's the miracle of this stuff. We're helping with the living problem. This book is going to help us with that. Okay. That means we've written a book which we believe to be spiritual, godly, or as well as moral, truthful. It means, of course, that we're going to talk about that witchcrafty guy. No, just kidding. Uh, my old sponsor had me write on the top of this page, top of the next page, how do I think about God? And I'll say that one more time. How do I think about God? And I want this is an exercise for everyone here, and you can write this down. Write down all your negative conceptions of God. When you hear the word God, what pops into your mind? Keyword mind, right? Because that's what we're really going to look at. Many times, so here difficulty arises with agnostics. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise when we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship, right? You know, that miracle of identification. Oh my God, that's me, that's me, that's me, right? But his face falls when we talk about spiritual matters. Damn it. Especially when we mention the word God. How do I think about God? For we have reopened a subject which our man thought, thinking, before he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. Howard, I'm gonna pass it back to you. I just gotta get my kids a
Sure,
little pouch real quick. I'll be
sure. um, Terry mentioned, the secret of this book is it's out. Now you know that the book is all about helping you find that power. And incidentally, notice it says which will solve your problem. It doesn't say will help you solve the problem. It doesn't say will enable you to solve the problem. It doesn't say will assist you in solving the problem. It says that if we access that power, that power will solve your problem. And as Terry said, fill in the blank. Whatever that problem is, that power will solve that problem. And the book says further that we're going to talk about, we've written a book, I'm sorry, that's spiritual as well as moral. Once again, what are the terms we're using here? Those of you who have been with me know that I'm a bug about defining terms. So, what does he mean by spiritual? What does he mean by moral in this case? Well, spiritual, I believe, refers to this journey that we're on to awaken to the presence of God in our lives, to awaken to the sense of God that's in us. We don't have to go looking for it. Mark Houston always said, we got to stop looking for God. You want to find God, you got to be out of your mind because you don't find God with that organ, you find God with another organ. God is in here. And we got to let the clear away the clutter that blocks him from getting out. So that's what this is all about, is that we're talking about a spiritual journey, which is this attempt to awaken to that power, and moral refers to the codes, these spiritual principles by which we're going to live once we access that power. When we access that power, tolerance, compassion, patience, humility, forgiveness, love, and goodwill. Please notice nowhere in those words does it say me, me, me. Everything was about me before. What's in it for me? What do I get out of it? Why should I do it? Now I've changed to another point of view, and my morals now are different. It's not all about me, it's all about God. And that's what moral and spiritual mean to me in that particular context. So let's continue on to the next paragraph, as we said we would. We know how he feels. And I've underlined that because when I read that, I felt I finally belong. These people are talking my language. I belong here. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Terry mentioned it before. Certain words we're counting. If you're keeping track, I know Bert's not here, but he likes to keep account. That's prejudice number one. He uses the word prejudice 6 times over the next few pages. That's number one. Some of us have been violently anti religious. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of Him which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. Can anyone identify with that? Religious dogma that's shoved down your throat. When I was a kid, I had to go to Hebrew school every day after regular school from 3:30 to 5:30 every afternoon between the ages of 9 and 14. For those of you who missed mathematics, that's 5. 5 years I had to go and get religious training shoved down my throat, and I hated it. So when he says this here, he's talking about me. You tried to force this crap down my throat, and it's religion. And you're not talking about religion. We said it in the previous paragraph. We're talking about spirituality, not religion. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. And please underline the next sentence. To me, this is so important. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely, which means to me that when other people's conceptions of God didn't work for me, and I tried, I imagined I made contact with God during an acid trip when I was 16. And so I went looking for him in different churches and different mosques, and I could not find him anywhere. And then when I came in here and you guys would talk to me about your concept of God, I couldn't identify with that either. So when other people's conceptions of God didn't work for me, I mistakenly concluded that God was inaccessible to me. And that's what that sentence means to me, that I abandoned the God idea because it just didn't seem to work for me. I tried your way, didn't work. But what I tried were religions, and religions never worked for me. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak, even cowardly. We looked upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism, deep disbelief. We looked askance at many individuals who claimed to be godly, right? The Jimmy Swaggarts, the Tammy Faye Bakers, the Jim Bakers, those fakes, phonies, and frauds. Uh, all of those. There's a quote that's attributed to the conqueror Napoleon, and I think it's an apocryphal quote. I don't think he ever said it, but I like the quote, so I'm going to pass it along. And he said, supposedly, that religious wars are basically people killing other people over who has the best imaginary friend. I like the quote. I don't think Napoleon said it, but I think it sums up every war that's ever been fought at its lowest, most common level is about religion. You don't worship our God, we'll kill you. We'll kill you if you don't do that. Let me just finish this up and turn it back to Terry. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Supreme being anyhow. And next to that, I've written, I have to stop trying to comprehend the supreme being. Like Mark Houston said, I can't find that with my brain. I have to be out of my head to find God because I find him with a different organ, not with my head, with my heart. Yet in other moments, we found ourselves thinking when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Terry?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. I mean, you could just see this paragraph is making us relate. This whole chapter is all about overcoming objections. I've been in sales for a long time. We have a little acronym called EIO, like EIEIO. That's how I remember it. And they're emphasizing with us in this paragraph. The next paragraph, they're going to isolate. That's the I. Then they're going to overcome that objection with the following paragraph. And then look at all the references to the mind: comprehend, skepticism, thought, a particular idea of God is brought up. How do I think about God? When you hear this, I mean, look at Bill's story. You're talking about someone who had a lot of agnostic antagonism towards the word God. It was Billy. You can read pages, what is it, 10, 9 to 12, or something like that, I believe. And you'll see all his agnostic temperament journey that he goes through, right? And it says, yes, we agnostic temperament have had these thoughts, that's 14, and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as, underline those three words, that's a time frame. That means right here, right now. As soon as I am able to lay aside prejudice, sounds like a prayer that we talked about, right? Put number one above that. There's four spiritual requirements that are to find this power, or how to find this power. Was one of them is to lay aside prejudice. Prejudice definition means is preconceived ideas, my mind, or thinking, mind. So preconceived, oh, I'm sorry, opinions, sorry. Ideas and opinions. Sounds like we're talking about our thinking. And express even a willingness, put number two above that, one of the spiritual requirements to find this power, meaning to act as if, express even a willingness, to believe in a power greater than ourselves. I don't know why. Are they talking about self when they say ourselves, Howard? I don't know why that just hit me right now. So I need a power greater than myself, in my mind, right? I guess that's what it's saying. I don't know why that just hit me right now. We commence to get results. Even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. So whenever I try to fully comprehend or define this power, I'm playing God with my mind. They actually give us the definition of God. They call it power. And the definition of power is God. Back to you, Howard.
Yeah, and again, he says it again that I don't have to fully define or comprehend God, that power. I don't have to fully comprehend. I never will fully comprehend that power. The moment I comprehend that power is the moment I usurp that power and think I am that power. So I got to stop trying to look for that power. But as Terry mentioned, I had mentioned on the previous page certain questions. We said we were going to talk about how to find this power, where to find this power, and when. Well, here's the instructions for how to find this power. Terry mentioned number one, first thing we have to do, lay aside prejudice. And I'll put this up here for a minute. I put it in the chat as well. Okay, there we go. How do we find God? Number one, lay aside prejudice. That's number one. Terry pointed it out. Number two, express a willingness. We have to be willing to believe. And then in the next paragraph, it tells us the third thing we have to do is to seek Him. To seek Him means action, taking action. And I've left that in the chat, so if you want to make a copy of it, you can. And let me continue. Much to our relief, we discovered we didn't need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, and please underline however inadequate because it is inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and affect the contact with him. Please underline make the approach, underline affect the contact. And I'm going to stop here for a second and suggest an assignment, which is take a pen and a piece of paper and write the qualities, the traits that you would like your higher power to have. A sense of humor, got to be a Miles Davis fan. That goes without saying. Got to have a sense of humor. If you doubt whether God has a sense of humor after the meeting, Google a baboon's ass. There's no reason for it to look like that except God saying, hey, look, can you do that? Can you do that? Whatever you think God is, whatever traits you would like that power to have, write it down and don't show it to anybody because it's yours. It's personal. It is your conception of that power. And that's what we're talking about here. However inadequate that power is, we just have a list of characteristics. If you believe he's punishing, put him down. Whatever you think God is, you have to start somewhere. And Bill's about to tell us we need a reasonable assumption as a starting point. And the reasonable assumption is there is this power, and this is what it looks like. I just wrote down these qualities on my paper. I'm not letting you see it because it's mine. I'm not showing you it, but you got your own on your piece of paper. It's inadequate, but you can now begin to approach that power because you know what it looks like. You just painted a picture of it. Bet you didn't figure that one was coming. Bet you didn't see that one coming. Um, uh, as soon to affect the contact, as soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, and here Bill's starting to tell us some euphemisms, some, as Kathy says, synonymisms for God, different ways of saying God. Creative intelligence. If you don't like the G word, try creative intelligence. I like Waldo. I think this whole chapter should be renamed Where's Waldo? Because if you're familiar with Where's Waldo, that's what this chapter is about. Trying to find that little guy Waldo on all of these pages. But in any case, spirit of the universe, underlying the totality of things, we begin to be possessed by a new sense of power and direction, provided, here's the if, provided we took other simple steps. We don't stop on the second or the third step. We have to take action. Those other simple steps, those self-appraisals, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we found that God doesn't make too hard terms with those who seek him. And there's instruction number 3. You know who makes harsh terms? Religions. Religions make very harsh terms on people. You want to belong to our club? You got to dress like this. You got to eat like this. You got to stand like this. You got to pray like this. You got to go to temple on these days. To me, those are very harsh terms. We don't have any of those terms. Religions are a set of practices. You want to belong to our club and worship our imaginary best friend? You got to do this. Spirituality is about a set of disciplines. You got to have a discipline for God and prayer and meditation. And guess what? You define it. Nobody else does. Um, doesn't make harsh terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of the spirit is broad, roomy, all inclusive. It contains all of us, never exclusive. In the 1939 dictionary, the word exclusive is defined as shutting one out by law, policy, or doctrine. Eliminating people because of policies or doctrines, or forbidding. Forbidding, according to the 38 dictionary, means disagreeable. That if you don't agree with our terms, you can't be part of our play group. To those who earnestly seek, seek means action. It is open, we believe, to all men and women. And Tara?
Yeah, and Mark Houston said it's not the name of the power, it's the power behind the name that we're looking for, right? Because we lack power. Do I believe that I lack power? Yes, absolutely, I do. And he doesn't make too hard terms with those who seek. Where are the terms at? You're gonna notice in the third step, if we draw close to him and perform his work well, is one of the terms, which is so simple to do. It really is. And however bullshit your idea of God is, it's a start. That's all that's neat. Yo, I mean, I had a conversation with a guy. I was working overnight on Wednesday, he was asking for help and blah blah blah. I was talking to him and had the ability to talk to him at work. And I said, "Do you have a higher power in your life?" One of the questions I asked, and he said, "No, I don't believe in religion." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, "Well, I'm not talking about religion here. I'm just asking, do you believe in some type of power that ain't you? Like when you go to a meeting, do you feel better? I mean, even going down to a thing like that, making the meeting your higher power, is inadequate higher power, but it will help you make an approach and start this effect because your conception of God will change and will transform as you go through the process of recovery. I mean, and it has become more universal, all inclusive, just like what Howard was talking about. Something that helped me. I mean, in the beginning, I was literally direction, just because I liked it, sounded cool. And it became group of drunks. That sounded even cooler. And it became the great outdoors because that sounded better than that. And then it became love. And then it became the highest power. Then it became. I mean, yes, you can make your damn higher power doorknob, but sooner or later that doorknob will fail you. Just make it bigger. Make it the door. One day that door is gonna fail you. Make it bigger. Make your God bigger. Make it the house. One day that house is gonna fail you, make it the town, the city. One day that city is gonna fail you, make it the world, make it the spirit of the universe, and then all of a sudden it's the highest power in your life. You got to start somewhere. That possibly something maybe is out there that could help me, and it's not this thinker, and it's not this talker up here. Because why? Because I'm reading a book at 8 o'clock on a Friday. Just kidding. You guys got the drift, right? Okay. And therefore, we speak to your God. We mean your own conception of God. What's up, buddy? You okay? I mean, that's the beauty of this program. That means there's no arguments between us. You can believe in whatever God you want. I mean, shit, you can believe in the duck-billed platypus as your higher power. That's a cool guy. And, what about the God of fun? I mean, I love humor. You know, I mean, the God. Here's one thing: the idea, your talker up here, the mind, the idea, the concept of God that you came in with is not the God that's going to help you stay sober. We are going to change that by overcoming objections and looking at your mind in this paragraph. And our fourth requirement for spiritual growth is in this paragraph, which is our next sentence. Actually, it's the next one after that. This applies too to other spiritual expressions you find in this book. Here's our fourth requirement for spiritual growth and also how to find this power. Do not let any prejudice, preconceived ideas or opinions you may have against spiritual terms like creative intelligence, supreme being, uh, whatever, deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. And I started all the way back in the doctor's opinion when they started talking about this word power. I mean, a doctor, they're pretty good writers. They don't capitalize words in the middle of sentences. The doctor did. He's referencing a higher power. If you're new here, every time they capitalize a word in the middle of the sentence, they're referencing a higher power. And take that word and put it on a piece of paper, lay aside prejudice, and ask yourself what it means to you. What the hell does spirit of the universe mean to me? Well, it feels like the same energy that's chilling in Yonkers, New York, is also chilling in Florida. It's also chilling in the UK with Andy right now. It's also in Utah with my boy Stan S. It's also in Pluto. It's also present in Switzerland and Australia with my boy James, right? It's in Sydney. I know damn well it's in Sydney, James. I know it's omnipresent. It is right here, right now, everywhere. And I'm gonna start praying to that higher power.
I don't know
It,
about Brooklyn, but okay.
yeah, Brooklyn's a little different. And here's the thing, like, yes, you are creating your own God, but that's not really the point. Yes, you are creating it, but in a nutshell, God is creating you during this process. And what will happen is you will tap an unsuspected inner resource. You guys ever you ever tap a keg before? You know, that's what we're doing here. When we are going from up here, the alpha, the omega, the beginning and all the thinker, we are now shifting down to the world of the spirit, which is within our hearts. That's God's country. So, and that's how we started, right? At the start, this is how we start. This is all we needed to begin, which is commence spiritual growth. So, requirements for spiritual growth to an effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. And Paige, I wish she was here. She gave me the 1930s definition of understood. It means to learn through experience. I kept saying this is the God of my misunderstanding. No, it's actually understand. It's to learn through experience. We are talking about the God of your experience, the experiential God, a feeling. Like, what does a rose smell like? What does a banana taste like? I don't know. It tastes like a banana. It smells like a damn rose. But it's all about experiential. God can't be explained because this little talker wants to try to explain God. I mean, I tried to Google God when I was in rehab, actually in sober living. I was like, what is God? And I was trying all these ways to fully define and comprehend this power, which is God, but I can't because it's experiential. It's a moment. It's a feeling. It's right here, right now. It's an energy chilling in Jupiter. And it's also in Brooklyn, too. Right? Okay. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many crazy things, which is my experience, which seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however bullshit it was. That's what Bill changed the word in the second edition. No, I'm just kidding. However limited it was, right? It could start out whatever small. If you're sponsoring someone, and I highly recommend that you don't hit them with the God in the beginning. Hit them with your story, hit them with the hopelessness and the fatal malady, the fatal nature of their illness to beat them up and make them hopeless. Because then all of a sudden, like, all right, then maybe there's some type of power that's working in this cat's life that could help me too. Maybe possibly something out there that I could possibly believe in. That's all step two is talking about, which is a setup for the next paragraph, which we will discuss. So, back to you, Howard.
Just out of curiosity, how many people here like to have things their way? Right? I'm not just talking about Burger King or McDonald's. You like to have things your way? Well, here's the good news. Here, what Terry just read is the only place in this book where we get to have it our way. Every place else is filled with musts and requirements, but here we get to have this power any way we want it, as long as it makes sense to us. And in this paragraph, it tells us where to begin. Terry hit on it right on the head, where he says, don't let the prejudices you have against spiritual terms. And I'm going to suggest for the first time, instead of changing the words religious to spiritual, turn spiritual to religious. And that way the sentence says, don't let any prejudice you have against religious terms deter you from asking yourselves. Please underline what they mean to you. In other words, it starts with an examination of your beliefs, not what you've been told, not what you've been taught, not what you've read. What does God mean to you? Really? What is that, those three letters, what does that represent to you? That's where we start. This little piece of paper with a list of traits, that's God. And it's your way. It's not a quarter pounder with cheese. You get to have it your way. I'm not going to get into the next paragraph. I'm going to leave you with that next week. Don't want to go there today. Uh,
You sure? We got
you want
six,
to do
five
it? You want
minutes.
to do the
Yeah,
second step?
fuck
Okay.
yeah, fuck yeah.
We
That's a
needed
cool.
to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? There's one, no, please notice that's one question. In the Hazelton work step guide, there are about 100 questions for step 2. In the NA step working guide, there are 74. I counted them, 74. If you weren't confused when you started, you sure as shit will be when you finish. There is one question and only one question necessary for step 2. And I'm going to ask you all right now what that is. Do you now, or are you willing to believe, do you now believe, or are you willing to believe that there is a power greater than yourself? Congratulations, you've just taken the second step.
Yeah,
I
pew
think
pew
I just heard
pew.
God say, what an order. I can't go through with it, but we'll let him have his way. You want to finish it up? Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, a couple things. So remember I asked you guys to write all your negative conceptions of God. Well, now we're gonna flip it. All right. So like I had God was boring. And I said, hey, I'm willing to believe that God is fun. So I'm gonna start praying to a fun God. What about a judgmental God? Well, I'm willing to believe that, God is forgiving. So I'm gonna start praying to a forgiving God. Now, and also this is a huge paragraph because all of us, it doesn't matter how much damn time you have in your recovery, we all go back to we have this agnostically inclined personality. We go back to ourselves. It talks about complacency. This is going to help you get out of complacency. So I want you guys to add this to the sentence. It says, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself that could take me to a new level of freedom? That's a spiritual exercise for every single one of the people here. I don't give a crap how much time you have, if you're on day one or day 10,000, right? Because if I start getting complacent, then I could start, yet again, my mind could become overpowering to the point where I will listen to it so much that I won't hear anything and I'll be completely shut off from whatever. And I'll think about getting high or drunk in the future, right? This is our second step proposition, really easy. I remember I was talking to a guy, he's like, I'm working step 2. I'm like, how the F are you doing that? It's an idea. That's what it is. 3 pertinent ideas. You guys read that and how it works, right? We read how it works so fast, it's just becoming lip service. But there's a lot of juice in that in those pages. This is our idea. This is an experiential step, right? Just like Howard's talking about creating your own God, whatever conception that means something personally to you, or how I'm changing it and doing the opposites, right? Forgiving God, fun God, right? Whatever it means to you, that's how we get we start this approach or this effect. But taking it to a new level in your current recovery, try this. I recommend doing this and meditating this in the morning and asking God, am I willing to believe that you could take me to a new level of freedom? How free do I want to be? Which is the question. Okay, as soon as that's a time frame. So as soon as a man or woman could say he believes, and believe is for the agnostic, or is willing to believe, that's for the atheist, we emphatically assure him that he's on his way. Woo, congratulations, you just completed step 2, right? Right. I've been waiting for someone to say no to each one. I just kind of waiting for that because I got one up my sleeve. I'm like, well, just go to the nearest ocean. If you're not by an ocean, get on a plane and go to the East Coast or the West Coast. Go to the beach. Go take off your shoes, take off your socks, go to the edge of the water, put up your hand and stop the fucking waves from crashing. And then come back to me and tell me, are you willing to believe that there's some type of power greater than yourself, right? Okay. We emphatically assure he's on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that this simple, my sponsee told me to look at the word simple throughout this chapter too. So I started counting it. Simple cornerstone, which is one of our pillars, because we're going to be talking about some witchcrafty questions on page 75. Like, did we make some, what is it, water out of, I forgot what it says. What does it say on page 75? I got to go back to because I don't mess it up. Carefully reviewing, admitting, are we building an arch through which we shall walk a free man? Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Our cornerstone. Am I willing to believe that possibly, maybe that there's something out there, or I believe? Or if I skimp on the cement, this is part of our stone, put into the foundation. Have we tried to make mortar out of sand? We're going to ask you these crazy questions. And thank God we have Howard that could explain the cornerstone to us. All right, and you can take us out with that.
Okay, before I do that, I just, in case any of you don't know what a baboon's ass looks like, I put it in the chat, so you can all jump over there and see what I'm talking about. And now you tell me, does God have a sense of humor or what? Can you do that? In any case, what Terry just mentioned, and this is a great place to end, is Bill has been building this spiritual structure for us. He started in step one by telling us that willingness was the foundation. On page 12, he said willingness was the foundation. The foundation is just what it says, the foundation. What you build any edifice on rests on a foundation. And then he said believing was the cornerstone. Step two, the cornerstone, as I understand it, and I'm not a mason, Jews don't do that work. We buy masons, we sell masons, we don't lift rocks. But be that as it may, a mason would tell you that a cornerstone is the thing that keeps an edifice plumb and level. It keeps it from collapsing and tilting over. And that's what step two is. And he's about to tell us that step three is this keystone. We're not there yet, but it's that triangular stone at the top of the arch that keeps it from caving in on itself. That the keystone over time creates downward pressure that makes the arch stronger and stronger and stronger. Not weaker, it makes it stronger if it's placed properly. But what we're just talking about is this cornerstone, and we've got the foundation, and this is the triumphant arch through which we pass to freedom. And later on page 75, as Terry mentioned, we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. And that's the spiritual structure.
And I think someone had a question about that. Emily, so we're talking about your negative conceptions of God, write them all down. And then when you get to this part, ask yourself, am I willing to believe in the opposite of that? That's the spiritual exercise. And then you get to create your God. And yet again, yes, you are creating a God, but in a nutshell, God is creating you when you do this process. So we'll stop the recording there. I can't do it. Howard, do you mind doing it for me?